Welcome to the Sanctuary Podcast, hosted by Angel Deer. In this podcast, we explore the mysteries of spirituality and consciousness. In each episode, we dive deep into the realms of human experiences, our rapidly changing world, and the unseen realms, tapping into the universal wisdom that connects us all. Whether you're a seasoned spiritual seeker, starting to awaken to the possibilities of a more expansive reality, or want support on your journey, this podcast is for you. Join me as we explore topics such as shamanism, spiritual transformation, holistic healing, the medicine path, energy healing, plant medicine, ancient wisdom, and more. Our guests are respected elders and experts in their fields, and we'll learn from their insights and experiences as we journey together on the path of spiritual growth. If you can, please consider supporting this podcast by joining our Patreon page at patreon.com/thesanctuaryny. Once again, it is patreon.com/thesanctuaryny. Now, let's dive into today's episode.
Welcome to the second of our speaker sessions for Inspiration Festival 4, Expansion, Breathing Beyond the Known. And I am delighted during this session to invite in my very dear friend, Angel Deer, who will be sharing with us many things of his journey, including repairing our cosmic aura field with breathwork and ancient wisdom. But I know our conversation, like many others that we have, will touch on all sorts of areas. Now, before we get into our conversation, I would like to invite all of you here and all of you watching on the recording just to join us in a few breaths, to come into presence to this moment, wherever you are right now, before we begin. Closing your eyes. Just a few gentle breaths in and out through the nose. Maybe open your eyes and connect to the screen, to me and Angel, maybe to the people who are with you right now. Thank you, everyone. Angel, it is such a pleasure to have you in our space again. I feel really, really honored to welcome you here. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Good to be here.
I think how I would like to start off with is something that we have done before. Now, before, when you've come into the Inspiration Festival, you have offered us a blessing, offered us almost a prayer for our endeavor to light up the world, to bring breathwork to people who really need it, to bring some medicine for those who, well, everyone needs a little bit of medicine. I'm wondering if you feel able to maybe say a few words of blessing for all of us who are connecting in this moment.
Sure. Thank you, brother. Yeah, it's a way to just, set our own sacred space with ourselves, with the land we're sitting on. I see some beautiful greenery around some of you. Inviting and calling our ancestors, honoring our parents, our grandparents, those that came before us, that allowed us to be here today, remembering that we are on this long chain of wisdom and healing, calling for the directions, the elements, the east, the west, the north, and the south, the fire, the water, the air, the breath, and the earth, asking for their wisdom, calling in our prayer the land we are sitting on, the ancestors that are in that land, any spirits that is willing to give its light and its guidance today. And also inviting every part of us today, maybe as you pray or as you connect, just allowing every part to be present, especially the tender part, the less loud parts, the parts that wish to be seen and are not, wish to be heard and are not. So we give a stage to our full presence. We invite our full presence and we honor our full presence in every side of us, every aspect of us. So asking that we all speak and walk this life always in this level of consciousness, in this remembering, and in this type of allyship or relationship with what's within and what's around. And so we feel supported, we feel safe, and we feel kind in this moment.
Oh, thank you, Angel. Amen. I feel your words. I feel your words. So we're going to have a conversation. I will, of course, be leading and asking you some questions, but of course, this is a two-way conversation. If you wish to go somewhere else, if you wish to ask me anything, or if you wish to put a question out to our participants here, then please, I want you to feel supported in doing that. I'll come on to the title of your talk in a little while, but I think I'd like to start off with my request from you to start with a blessing and your role now as a spiritual teacher and leader, a person to many come to for nourishment and for learning. And I would like you to share a little bit about when and how you felt comfortable in this position of leadership, of authority. I know if I asked most people, would you lead us in a blessing right now? Most people would, run a mile from doing that. But because of who you are, your wisdom and your experience, you had no problem in stepping that role. I would love to hear how you became the person, the teacher and the leader that you are now.
Mm, thank you. Well, first, I don't know if I always see myself that way, or even if I call myself that way, because I think we're all, on a path of remembering, a path of reconnecting to the sacred, not just around us, but within us. And, I like those prayers because I feel very often it's easy to forget. It's easy to be entangled into the dramas of the world and our own drama, right? Our own stories. And so I've experienced, that's all what I can share. It's just my experience that when in my life I started to consciously call more often this part of myself, this part of the world, those aspects of the sacred. Everything is sacred in my tradition. There's nothing that is separated from creator, God, universe, however you want to call it. That somehow we do remember our true self more often. That we step out of our stories more often. That we get a reflection that is more clear, like we polish the mirror, we clean the mirror. And I guess to answer a bit more precisely your question, I think for a long time, at least for me, I was kind of hiding that because I was in the corporate world. I was in a very different type of environment. And I would go kind of pray, but hiding when I was praying. I would go connect to nature, but not really share with everyone what I experienced there. And at some point, I guess I started to share a little bit, to say, hey, I experienced this. This is my experience of the world. And started to connect to people that were interested uh, in that type of connection, in that type of life, really. Because for me, I don't see the spiritual life and a normal life, or the work life and the spiritual life. For me, it's just life. And so, and I think the most important, and it's hard because I often get a lot of students that come to learn all those ways of reconnecting and remembering. But even after some time, many years, and maybe I'm not that good a teacher, that's just the truth, but they still make the distinction. Oh, there is my work and this is happening. And I didn't get a chance to pray this morning or to do my practice. But it's really a story, it's a lie, because everything is practice, right? Everything is life, everything is sacred. So at the foundation of it, we can't really separate it. This is the mind that is coming in the way and like to make distinction. So I like to see this practice, or even what I did, at the beginning of this session, more as a remembering. I did it as much for myself that for you guys. It's like, okay, let's remember myself. Let's call what I want to bring here to the forefront, hoping that it's happening as I speak. And then when we walk that way, our life, uh, we have more space for life, for all of life, right? That's really what it is. I think one of the mistakes is to think that when we do that, we somehow get some kind of preferred seat, like in the theater, right? You're going to get closer, you get the VIP seat with the creator, or you get some kind of shielding from, I don't know, illness or being human. It doesn't give any of that. And that's the trick, right? It is not going to protect us from illnesses, from losing people, from pain. But what it does is it gives us a different outlook on all of that, on all those aspects of life. And it gives a different container. I think it gives more space because it gives more heart. Often I have students that have been working for so many years now, and sometimes they get through a very big life problem, as we call them. I don't know. They divorce, they get ill, their kids go crazy, something happened, right? And they're like, I don't understand, I've been doing all my prayers and I've been practicing. I'm giving so much to others. I've aligned myself a lot more than I used to. And yet this is still happening. Right? Yeah, welcome to life. Welcome to being human. And for me, ultimately, that kind of prayer or this type of remembering, this is the way I want to walk my life. It's not that it's better compared to those who don't. It's not that it's shielding me. It's not that it's going to protect me. It's more like, well, I have two ways of walking this life. One where I ignore this fundamental truth that we are all connected and we are all sacred, and there is consciousness in every aspect of life beyond just the human beings. And I want to have an experience of that and live in that type of connection. Or I'd rather live in a life that is, not connected to that. And my choice is very clear, right? But it doesn't potentially change the way we are loved or cared for by those sacred things. And I think that's really important to see that it's really a deep personal question of meaning and how we give meaning to our lives and our relations. more than specialness or uniqueness compared to others. I think that avoids a lot of pitfall, and also that, for me at least, that opens me to a lot of compassion to the others, what we call the others. Maybe we'll go more into that, because there's not really others out there. We're just one big family, and families are complicated, right? So, and I think that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to live together, in a good way. And yeah, it's going to be sometime sad, hard, heartbreaking. Sometimes maybe even it feels like there is no meaning in some experience of life, right? Or some things that are happening in the world. Um, and guess that's where we sit most often, in this not knowing. Right? But I always felt like the not knowing and the no meaning is often more soft than the knowing. I don't know. A lot of people know a lot of things in the world, but can be very disconnected, right? From themselves, from each other, from the natural world. It doesn't feel like the knowing. We're in a society of knowing, right? Knowledge. We can't just go on Google and basically learn about anything. It's amazing, right? When you think of it, our ancestors probably would be like, "This is crazy," right? And now with AI and all those things, right? It's like we're accessing to more and more knowledge, uh, and it seems to be the addiction that we have. But in fact, what we're really looking for is meaning, is wisdom, not knowledge. We want more meaning. We want more wisdom, and we think we can get it through more knowledge. Um, Sadly, no, it's not going to happen that way. It doesn't, because if not, we'll be really wise today as a civilization. So the prayer, just to finish on that, the prayer invite us in this. My teacher always say when you pray, you're put back into your seat. You put back into where you're supposed to be, because you recognize that there are things that are much bigger, much more powerful, and impossible to understand, that you are in relation to, and that are beating your heart, that are literally holding your life in their hand and can decide at any moment to swipe you out. And kind of sitting back there as the student of life is like a child, right? It's like, there's so much I don't know. And this is kind of exciting, because there's a lot to learn. I feel it's a more exciting place to be than trying to know everything, thinking we can fix anything or control anything, which ultimately, right, is a great illusion of our time.
Thank you, Angel. And let's just stop here and take a breath. Please join with me, everyone, and feel all of Angel's words and wisdom and energy landing with us. Thank you, Angel. You gave us an incredible amount there. Some of the things that really struck me was the idea that everything is holy, everything is spiritual, everything has consciousness, not just ourselves. And I suddenly realized, if you look at the world like that, it changes everything. It really makes a difference on how we interact with the world. I loved your use of the word remembering, or remembering, about who we are and what we are doing here. I especially loved your description of the choice that we make when we go on an internal journey. It doesn't mean that we're going to get the VIP seats. It doesn't mean we're going to be healed or get closer to the Creator. It doesn't mean we are any more loved. And yet it is about us not keeping ourselves small and disconnected and closed off. It is about walking in a path where there is more possible. And those words really struck to me. I'm not sure if you actually answered my question about how you
Probably not.
stepped into this role, but that's okay. That's absolutely fine. I actually feel the transmission that you are giving us is more important than maybe just the biographical details, which I know are interesting because you have led a really interesting and fascinating life on your journey to become a teacher. Um, that is really interesting, but we don't have to go there today. I'm wondering, your title that you gave us for this talk that you would like to touch on was about repairing our cosmic auric field.
Mm.
Maybe you could let's. I think I would like to move into that area. Maybe before we talk about healing or repairing or transforming or growing or deepening that connection, perhaps you might like to share what you mean by our cosmic auric field and how that fits into a wider belief system that you know is truly part of your worldview. Does that sound
Mm.
like a good place to start?
Sure. Yeah. In the tradition of Andean cosmology, like you will find in pretty much all spiritual traditions, I've studied also Advaita Vedanta, so the Hindu lineage scriptures, which is more a non-dualistic path, but shamanism and Andean cosmology is more dualistic um, kind of philosophy. Um, there is this idea, and you will find it probably in all the world religions, that we are coming from a source, and that this source is what manifested all of creation, from the universe, the macrocosm to the microcosm. Like literally everything is always like a leaf on a tree, an emanation, an expression of that source. And what all the mystics, all those people that study this manifestation, they all say, well, this source is just love. If you just sit for a second about that, with that, and look at the world, or even look at yourself in the mirror, or look at your closest relationships, do you see that? Do you always feel that? I don't. I don't always see it, right? Sometimes, like, really? That's what's behind that? Is love? And then when you really sit a bit longer, you can always find it. That's my experience. Like even someone that is screaming at you, or let's say if it's easier for you, just take an angry politician on TV that you really don't like. So I let you pick and choose there. And you see mainly anger and maybe prejudice and maybe, things that don't feel like love, definitely. But when you sit with that and you really look at what's happening, you can just see that's love calling. That's a desire for being seen, for being loved, for being heard, for connection, for connection. So the more you study, and I feel that what we call the dark teachers, the pain and the angry and all of that. So when you look at the darkness, it's like where you can create contrast, and I think that's where you get the most teachings. It's very easy to find love in your dog if you have a dog, right? It's pretty clear. And like I say, always to my students, say, well, it's easy to love dogs, right? Hopefully, maybe you just like cats. But the the real exercise, the real game, is to get to love what's unlovable. It's very hard. What maybe feels like horror or terror. How do we do that? Well, we need to go deep into that exploration of what we are, what is really there. So if I come from that source that is just love, that is about connection, creation, the first words in the Old Testament, in the Hebrew Bible, it starts by, and she created creation. So she could create. She, by the way, so she, so it's a feminine plural, so she was an S in the Aramaic. And she's, it's like a bunch of women, right? They created creation so they could create, right? So that's the first act of the creator. And the breath onto the calm seas, and then the words, every text, every spiritual religions, in Buddhism, in Hinduism, you're going to find this kind of moments where somehow there was this thing that was full potential of everything, and it started created from that, and everything came out of that belly, that womb of the universe, right? So if you follow that line of thoughts, and you can disagree with it, by the way, you can think that maybe creation came differently or from different kind of source, um, but that's not what people that study the source says. And it's beyond religion, by the way, because you find it with native people, and you find it with the great religions, and you find it with all the spiritual traditions. So let's say you're a scholar of that, you will kind of probably see that, well, it came from that love. And so I came from that love. So this is what I am. And this is all there is. Now I have an experience, a personal experience, probably of myself, without even thinking of anyone else, that this can be love, this back pain, this feeling in my heart right now when I'm really upset or angry or triggered or shamed or afraid. Is that love? Well, and I think, breathwork is one of the beautiful medicine out there that we have that allows us to kind of go from the conscious experience, from the dual experience of the mind, the labeling, into the non-dualistic ultimate truth and reality of what is really happening here. So the cosmic field, you can call it the soul, is what we're born with or from. That's where we're returning. I truly believe, not because anyone told me or it's written in a book, because that's been my experience, that it is just love. It's a very high vibration. It's cosmic. It's ancient. It comes from beyond the stars. It is the stars. That vibration is my ultimate potential, because that is the vibration that is my source. So I'm like the leaf on the tree, and recognizing that I'm not the leaves, I am an extension of the tree. I am the whole tree, even if I'm this wicked, funny leaf somewhere. Right? So I'm that extension, right? But somehow I came out of the womb. I lived my life. I experienced the world. And as I experience it, I'm confronted with things that don't feel like love. And what happened when that happened, usually, well, I fall into that belief. I start to believe that story of the world, that story of pain, that story of it can't be love. I'm not just all love. And when we look in the mirror, we don't see the same thing as when we look at our dog or the sunrise. around a baby, right? But that's all there is there, right? So what happens is really what interests me, not only what happens, but how do we return to the original experience? Why do we have even to return there? We can even ask the question, why are we doing this? Does it matter? Where does it go? So where does it lead? Also, where does it go if we don't do that? What happens if we don't do that? My teacher often said there's only two paths in life. He said there is love, and then the other path, all the other paths are going to be a search for the first path. So I say you choose. Well, you can search. Oh. And you're going to search a lot in your life, but really what you're searching for is that return to that original soul, that cosmic field that was perfect. Perfect. Because that's the leaf of the tree. It was born out perfect. It has all the potential, all the information, all the wisdom of your ancestors, all the way down to the Big Bang and the Big Bang before that. Because that's literally your ancestors, not just your grandparents. To go back and back and back and back on that family tree, you came from that belly, that cosmic belly. So obviously, having an experience of this cosmic field, here it's a nice discussion, hopefully, but we can, kind of imagine and feel into it. But I think it's really important to have embodied experience of it, to have remembering experience of it, when we have that connection and we see it and we feel it, maybe for a glimpse of a second, and then we say, this is it. That's home. That feels really like home. It feels so different from my life. Maybe it feels so different from what I call home, but somehow it feels more true than anything else I've experienced in my life. And for me, that's what it is. And that's the quest. And that's life. That's the prayer. That's this constant remembering, because we're always going to forget, and that's why we're here. We're here to remember that, to return to that. That's where we're going anyway. At some point, we're going to be taken out and put back into it. So, either we believe or not, we do the work or not, that's where we're all going.
Thank you, Angel. That was a really deep exploration of just the topic of your talk about our cosmic auric field, about how it is love, and that is the source that we are trying to get back to. I loved that teaching. We are either on the path of love or we are going to be searching for it. I've never heard that before, but it sums up so perfectly for me, the meaning of why we are here. Let's move slightly into breathwork, about how we can repair, how we can, integrate our cosmic auric field, our search for source, for love, with breathwork. And I'm also interested in how breathwork, or in the role or the position that breathwork plays in some of the lineal, indigenous, shamanic teachings that you have studied. How does breathwork repair our search and our source and our love, and how does that show up in some of the traditional teachings that you have studied and learned and now embody?
Yeah. So let me just step back just to introduce that, just for one little concept that I want to bring into that. So when we experience trauma, pain, hurt, there is crack. That's from that tradition that says there is cracks that appears on this field. It get cracked. When it cracked, the experience of life change. We might feel not as safe. We might feel not as happy, not as joyful. We kind of lose some of that initial feeling, some of that truth. On a more deeper shamanic perspective, and it's not really the topic today, but it is the place where negative energies, entities, demons can enter through those cracks. And it's a bigger topic. But you probably know people that had a very, very difficult childhood or experiences in their life, and then they're going to be really carrying a lot of pain, and it's going to be reflected in the way they are. Because there are a lot of cracks and things entered. There are a lot of things that can crack our field, including abuse, drugs, alcohol, many things that can change that vibration, right? Even information, what we read about, what we listen to, violence, images, things that are far from that vibration are usually going to damage it. And then we become that, right? So we are this constellation of consciousness. Some aspect of our consciousness are, I don't like to use the term pure because it sounds like the rest is impure, but are clean or original from the original matrix, the original instructions of the world. And some are things that we've learned or we've acquired. Sometimes we didn't know. It's not like we went to school and we learned about it. Life just taught us. Right? So in the Indian cosmovision, the breath, which is the air element, the wind, is connected to the north in the medicine wheel, which is connected to the season of the winter, which is connected to the top of the mountain, what we call the Apus, the great mountain, the big ones, the ones that have snow on top, like the elders, white hair. So it's the eldership, it's the ancestry, it's the connection to all there is. That's what they say. If you use the wind element, you can pray into all of the cosmos. Now bring that in. If I use my breath in, I can connect to all the parts, all the elements of that cosmic field. So I'm going to connect to aspects of myself that are beautiful and healed and loved, and that's going to feel really nice, right? We all have those experiences in breathwork that feel very orgasmic or very light or very beautiful. And then we are going to connect because that's the bridge into all there is. It's a bridge into all of creation, into aspect of the self or the collective that are in pain and in suffering. So that's the bridge medicine. That's the connector medicine. In fact, before praying, when we are with my teachers on a sacred site in those mountains in Peru, what we do is that we create a kintu, which is 3 coca leaves, sometimes 4, sometimes 5. So we put a few coca leaves together, and then we put them in front of our breath. And we breathe our prayer into the directions. We breathe it to the mountain. We breathe it to the waters. We breathe it to all aspects of our self and prayers that we want to call into manifestation. So that's the first thing we do before we do anything. We breathe into the direction. We breathe into the what's called the wakas, the great forces, the great mountain, the cosmos, the sky, the sun, the moon, right? And we don't always speak it first. We mainly breathe it. So I feel like this is one of the way we can call that connection back, and the way that indigenous people are still using it. There is this breath in Native American traditions, some of the Lakotas people I've studied with, we ask for the wind to carry our prayers to the Creator. We ask for the wind to come into our ears and our hearts so we can hear the prayers of all our relations. So that breath, that wind, is this connection, right, to all my relation. And when I say that, I'm not meaning just the trees or the plants and the other human beings, but literally also my relation from the invisible realms, spirits, guides, ancestors, cosmic forces, archangels, sacred geometry beings, like literally everything you want under the sun. So the breath is that first point of connection, right? And there are many, many practices around that wind and that breath, from smudging and cleansing and using herbs and plants to carry that message. Cedar is one of them, but there's other plants that we use for messaging, sending the prayers, right? Cedar tree and cedar herbs and plants is one of the main one that they say make the prayer perfect and make it receivable by creators. So we always pray and put some cedar in the fire in order to have that prayer transmitted, carried to the Creator. That's, kind of sounds, maybe, I don't know, hopefully it connects most of you, or it can sound a little bit out there. But there is also, I think, for me, and I don't know if you know that, but every time you take an inhale, 50% of that oxygen is coming from the Amazon rainforest in Brazil. Half of the oxygen on the planet from those trees down there. So we can do even just a much more physical connection to that breath, right? And what it brings to us and how it connects. Maybe we feel them, right? When we do that, you can see that if I consciously call or remember, oh yeah, it's coming from those trees, and I close my eyes and I inhale, I can maybe smile or feel them or see them or hear them. I can connect, and if I am connected, I care. Why do I care if I'm connected? Because that's the secret in me that recognizes the secret in them. We see source. We see that cosmic field that's not just around me, around them. We are home together, right? It feels nice. Feels good.
Thank you, Angel. That was a very powerful answer to that question, and really how our breath does begin to reconnect, to repair, to make whole again. Are there other practices, like specific practices that you might use or recommend or share with us to help us connect to that source, that to resource with us for ourselves?
Well, I think the first thing, and that's probably the most important, is to be able to recognize quickly that you are not in that vibration, that this is not the original instruction. The ego gets a lot in the way. We want to be right. We want to be heard, and we might keep going with whatever stories is going on in our mind in this moment. So we need to slow down a lot, because we cannot catch the things when we go too fast. We won't even see it. We'll be all day just angry at something. But if we were to sit with it, or even if we were to see ourselves and watch ourselves, we'll be like, hey, you're you're far, you're lost in the woods, you're searching. So I think it's really important to slow down. And how do we do that in the world we're living in? Well, we need to cultivate it. We need to put it on our schedule. If we have a busy schedule, I always say, well, yeah, you have a busy schedule, make it more busy with that kind of practice. You need to put it there. So it's mandatory. It's like, I don't know, making your taxes, or, right? It's like there is a deadline, right? So I have to do it, but it has to be as important, if not more. So we need to remember ourselves. We need to put there somewhere those practices of remembering. And we need to really, really be like Indiana Jones of our consciousness, be like explorers and curious and adventurous into every aspect of our psyche, our ego, our minds. And really, I used to be, I was a veterinarian. I trained, in medicine and surgery. And one of my favorite practice was dissection, to dissect things, to open them. And, maybe people are like, ugh. And one of the reasons I love it is because the more you dissect, the more there is, and the more you open, the more there is. And it's like this infinite unraveling of details and magic. And in fact, the further you go in, the more it becomes really crazy and like incomprehensible. Like probably if you go into the sky, right? You can look at the sky, and then you take a telescope, and then you take a micro and spatial telescope, and you start seeing things that feels like God to me. So we have to dissect, and explore every aspect of our psyche, especially the things that we think is who we are. Not the thing that, this, I don't like it, and I don't really want to be like that, but this is who I am. I believe that way. I think the world is that way. I think this is what's right and what's wrong. I think those people are on the wrong side of history, and I am on the right side. Really things that are core to our belief are the hardest to explore, because we assume they are part of the original instructions. They are part of this cosmic field. If you start embodying enough of that part of the story that is not yours, that is in fact ultimately false, and is going therefore to create pain in others or in you, you're basically bowing and praying to the crack in the field. You are acting from the crack. You are acting from that place. So I think it's really important to say, okay, this is what I've been doing so far. Is this me? Is this true? Is this love? And you're going to see, at least that's what I discovered for myself, and which is, terrifying in most aspect of it, but also eyes opening, that all the things that we think are who we are in fact not. We've learned them. Or they are so embodied across society, across this Western culture, that we think they are normal and they are okay when they're not. And so I think, as you do that, it's really important to be very resourced. And I know in Breathwork, we talk a lot about that, to have enough resource to go into those exploration, right? So to also cultivate joy and fun and goodness, because that's the source. The source is in pure gratitude. It's just gift. It's just creation. It only knows how to create. It doesn't know how to destroy. It doesn't know how to, do anything else than love. So we need to cultivate those moments so we have enough space that say, okay, now I'm going to start really looking at this pattern. But we need space for it, right? I might want to breathe with it. I might want to start praying to it. I might want to do a different altar, So we have the space to explore that. And we need to be patient. which is something that I don't think we have a lot in our world because things go fast. We're not patient. They kind of go together, right? But we need to take it really slow because the source has its own speed, it has its own wisdom, and there's nothing you can do to make it come faster. It's literally like planting a seed and screaming at it to grow faster. Or coming every morning is like, there's no leaves yet. What's happening? There must be something wrong with the seed. That's what we do to ourselves, right? And there's something wrong. This can't heal. We forget that there are speeds of healing and transformation, and those cracks that are often present for a very long time in our bodies are going to take as much time to heal that we took time to nurture them and develop them without knowing. Maybe it took 20 years to realize, well, it might take 20 years to get out of it. So we trusting, that there is something much bigger, much more powerful that is in the what we call the healing process. But that is the direction of the source. That is where this cosmic field intend to go anyway. So the kind of more step back while being present and attentive to what's going on is going to help healing usually faster than intervening and trying to fix, which is, when you think of it, not from source, from the crack, right? This attempt to heal constantly is not kind most often. It's not loving very often. So how can I heal pain by putting more pain and negativity on it? Wouldn't it be love that is needed? And love is kind, love is soft, love is slow. So is this my way of looking at it and approaching it? Right? I have no idea if I answered your question, brother.
Angel, you did. There was some very profound lessons you gave us there. First of all, to slow down, because if we go at the current pace, then we are not open. And that really reminded me of an old Buddhist meditation koan, or saying, meditate for an hour a day, unless you do not have enough time to meditate an hour a day, in which case meditate 2 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was the advice to be brave and to explore and to go curious and to go to those spaces, especially about ourselves, and especially into the meaning of ourselves, and to question everything. And then there was the advice of being patient, because source, creativity, love has its own speed, and we cannot rush it. And I love the metaphor of screaming at a seed to grow. That really, I love that.
Well, that's what we do, right? To ourselves and to each other, right? Someone is not healed or something's wrong. We just ask them to just somehow get to it, change, to be different. We don't trust the way. We feel like, but that's this God complex we have. We're not in our place. Once we know we are in connection to something way more powerful, we're in relation to it because there's no other way. And that I know it's walking beside me at all time, I can really chill. But I need to have an experience of that, right? I need to feel that, to trust that. And it's hard.
I think one more question for you before we close our session today, because already we have been talking for almost an hour. And that is about hope. Many people right now, they are in very challenging situation. Things may feel a deep struggle. And for many who look around in the world around them, they see division and chaos and war, and there is a lack of belief. There is a lack. There is even terror and fear, and everything that leads to. So I would like to ask you, from where you are as a student of source of love, do you feel hope in the future? Do you feel bright about what is coming? Do you feel that everything is going to work out?
What define workout, right? For who? For the earth, for the cosmos is going to work out because it's working out. For civilization, our way of life, I don't know. Is this working out? So, when we think of hope, it's kind of a self-centered, human-centered emotion. We hope to be saved, right? Because we deserve it, I guess. We're special. And indeed, there is a terrifying and at least heartbreaking collapse of so many species, kins, our families, extended families. There's not a day that passes where a species doesn't disappear that we'll never see again. And there is tremendous amount of loss and therefore pain and grief, in the system of the earth. So the fact that we are experiencing anxiety and fear and maybe hopelessness or terror or despair is good, because it means we're feeling into something bigger than ourselves, bigger than maybe just the human kin. And, there's also a lot of suffering in the human kin. I don't want to, obviously saying that it's not there. But on the scale, of number of species and number of individuals that are disappearing, the damage is way bigger on the plant kingdom and tree kingdom, and then the animal kingdom, and then we come third, right, after that. So the hope, there's, I think I shared that before in one of our talk. It was a teaching from a beautiful Lakota elder that I received over 10 years ago, but I kind of struck with me. And it was during the Keystone Pipeline protest. They were trying to get that pipeline built between Canada and the south of the US. And in South Dakota, there was this protest, and Native people were there to protest for the rights of the future generation to have access to clean water. It was not against the pipeline. It says, well, if you do that, we're going to lose clean water. And that's a problem. And one of the main elder that was there came for a talk in New York and kind of shared about the struggles of the fight and how they were met with extreme violence. It was heartbreaking, really sad. People here putting their life on the line. Even someone said, why would you just put your life on the line? I said, well, I'm ready to die for my mother. This is our mother that's being attacked. Won't you put your life on the line for your mother? There is a depth of connection there to the natural elements in Native people that I work with. It is very hard for us to embody to that level of connection. So imagine the level of pain and the level of emotional distress that they experience compared to even what we experience, right? And someone asked, say, do you have any hope that you're going to win this, that this pipeline is not going to be built? Do you have any hope? And he looked at the person and said, well, I don't know, because we don't have the word hope in our Lakota language. It doesn't exist. I understand what you say because I speak English, but in my language, we don't have it, because we have prayers and action. So we don't need hope. We have prayers and action, so we don't need hope. That stuck with me. So no hope, no hopelessness, doesn't really matter. This question doesn't need to be answered. What needs to be answered is prayers and action, which are one and the same too, right? Because your actions are your prayers manifested. You pray not just when we open the space today. We pray when we utter words, when we do any things, when we take any step on the earth. That's a prayer. Depends how we take the step, what we say, what we do. So I say, yeah, reconnect to your prayers, which I believe for us today in the world we are in is deeply experiencing that sacred bond connection we have with all there is and nurturing it. So yes, there is terrors and there is dramas and there is pains and there's all that in the world, but there is beauty. And there is so much of it. Right now, it's the fall coming here in the Northeast, but I was sitting yesterday looking at all my raspberries that are kind of going, because they're preparing for fall. And then this beautiful hummingbird came and just was flying right in front of me for like 5 seconds and then just went away. I was like, there's beauty. We need to see it. We need to cultivate it because we will not want to save a world that looks ugly. If there's just pain, if we only see pain and that, we're just going to give it up. There's no point. But if we see the beauty, if we connect to the sacred through our prayers, if we really feel it, that it's so precious that it's worth saving, then I think we're going to engage into right action. And then action, so prayers and action. But you see, they are kind of the same, right? It's like stepping into action. And what what each and every one of us can do every day to participate in the healing of that cosmic field, of that love. Where is it cracked in myself? How do I repair it? How do I participate in the repairing or participate in the cracks? There's a lot of work to be done there. So hopelessness, honestly, I don't know, because I don't know where it's going, I don't know what's going to happen. What I know is how I want to live my life in the meantime. If this is a time of collapse, if this is a time of great pain in this world for so many human beings and so many kins beyond that, I know when I wake up in the morning what matters. I know what I need to do. And I need to really focus on my prayer and my actions in that moment. But yeah, I'm going to be heartbroken, but that's okay. That's okay.
I'm not sure what a powerful way to end our time together. In my language, there is no such thing as hope. There is prayer and there is action. And really, action is prayer manifested. And I may be heartbroken, but I will still live my life. And I will die for my mother. Those words have really stuck with me today, Angel. Thank you for sharing your passion and your wisdom and your heart. I feel that so strongly, brother. It is a privilege to spend time with you and to feel that coming out of your heart. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Are there any final words that you would like to say before we close?
No, I think ultimately that we are afraid of softening. Why don't we choose love, right? It's like, for me, it's always like, why do we not choose it? It's just so nice feeling. It's such a nicer feeling. It's like, where I want to punish ourselves, right? Why do we feel that we have to be so hard with ourselves and each other? Why do we want to experience this disconnection and self-connection? What are we so afraid to feel in ourselves? If I soften, if I get really soft, I let down all the arms and the berries. What is terrified inside of me to be there without this protection? That's the question. At least that's for me, right? Because I'm like you, right? It's like I do this things. So it's like, what is there in the back that I haven't seen yet that is telling me I need all those armors and swords in front of me so it's safe? That's the big question in each of us, I believe. Because once we found that, and once we know, we can soften. Once we understand it just need love, it doesn't really need that kind of armors, then I think we can find our way back home.
Shall we take a breath today, right now, and maybe just feel if we can let go of that armor a little bit and just maybe catch a glimpse of the way back home. Thank you, Ansha.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you, everyone, today listening. Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the Sanctuary Podcast. We deeply value your support. Please consider sharing this podcast with others and joining our Patreon page at patreon.com/thesanctuaryny. Once again, it is patreon.com/thesanctuaryny. At The Sanctuary, we believe that spirituality is a personal journey that takes many forms, and we honor and respect all paths to awakening and the rise of consciousness. Our mission is to provide a platform for open and honest conversations about spirituality and to inspire and empower our listeners to live their most authentic lives in good relation to each other's, the living and invisible worlds. I look forward to connecting with you again here or at our events, retreats, and online gatherings. You can find all our offerings at thesanctuaryheal.com. Once again, it is thesanctuaryheal.com.